I used to think that family was the safest place in the world. But then I realized that sometimes the people you love the most are the ones who make you feel the loneliest. In the house where I live, every step must be taken carefully, like walking on thin ice. One wrong word, one misplaced action, and everything could shatter. On the surface, we seemed like a perfect family, but behind closed doors it was a world filled with tension and coldness. And me? I was nothing more than an unwelcome guest in my own home. My name is Emily, I'm 24 years old and I live with my mother, my older brother Noah, and his wife Olivia. We live in a 2-story house in the suburbs of Chicago, where outsiders believe we are the ideal family, a devoted mother, a successful son, and a well-behaved daughter. But only those who live within these walls truly understand the silent battles and the unspoken divide between those who matter and those who are merely an afterthought. Noah is 6 years older than me. He graduated from a prestigious university and quickly landed a high-paying job. To my mother, he is the pride of our family, the proof of all the sacrifices she made for her children. And me? No matter how hard I try, I am nothing but a faint shadow beside him. In my mother's eyes, Noah is the perfect child, while I am merely a responsibility she must bear, until she no longer has to. Olivia, Noah's wife, is intelligent, sharp, and ambitious. She always puts on a friendly face in front of others, but when it's just the two of us, she never misses an opportunity for a sly remark. Olivia knows exactly where she stands in this family, right beside the golden sun, adored by my mother, and unafraid to assert her silent authority over me. To my mother, I am invisible. I cook, clean, help her pay the bills, yet I have never once received a word of gratitude. Everything I do is taken for granted. If I make the slightest mistake, my mother will bring it up for months. But if Noah makes a mistake, it's merely a small accident, something a busy man like him shouldn't have to worry about. I had grown used to it, but then one day, my mother said something that made me realize that no matter how much I sacrificed, I would never be acknowledged. It was a night like any other. I had just finished washing a pile of dishes in the kitchen while Noah and Olivia lounged in the living room watching TV. My mother walked in, sighing as if carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. She looked at me, and then, in the lightest tone but with the heaviest meaning, she said, "Maybe you should move in with Noah and Olivia, it would be better for you." I stared at her, unable to believe what I had just heard. Better for me? What did she mean? I had lived here my whole life, I had done everything to keep this house running, and now she wanted me to leave? My mother didn't wait for me to respond. She simply shook her head and walked out of the kitchen, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. I stood there, my heart heavy. In that moment I realized a painful truth. To my mother, I was not truly a part of this family. I was just a temporary presence, a burden she was eager to get rid of. For the first time in my life, I felt like I no longer belonged here. I didn't say anything after my mother's words, but each syllable she spoke cut through me like a knife. I quietly continued washing the remaining dishes in the sink, but my mind was blank. Living with Noah and Olivia would be better for me? That was clearly not true. If I moved in with them, I would only become even more invisible, treated as nothing more than an unwanted guest in my own family. But that moment made me realize something important. I couldn't keep living like this. I needed to find a way out of a life where I had no place. I needed a plan of my own. I was in my second year of college, majoring in business administration. At first, I had chosen this field simply because it was practical, but now, I was starting to see it differently. My classes were no longer just abstract theories. They could be the key to my freedom. I started learning about online business. I read dozens of articles, watched countless tutorial videos, and joined discussion forums. At first, I took on simple freelance jobs like data entry and content writing. The money wasn't much, but it was mine, not from my mother, not from anyone in my family. For the first time in my life, I felt a sense of control over my own finances, even if it was just a small amount. But I didn't want to stop there. I wanted a stable income, something that would allow me to truly leave this house without relying on anyone. I experimented with different online ventures, from e-commerce to graphic design, but not everything yielded results. There were nights I stayed up late, exhausted from repeated failures. Meanwhile, Noah and Olivia continued their lavish lifestyle, and my mother remained entirely focused on her beloved son. I didn't bother telling them what I was doing. because I knew they would either dismiss me or mock my efforts. But I refused to give up. I realized that I needed a clear strategy. I started applying what I had learned in college to real-world scenarios rather than just studying to pass exams. I researched marketing, market analysis, and business strategies. Slowly, I began gaining my first clients for the online marketing consultancy service I was building. For the first time, I saw a future ahead of me, one without my mother's control or Noah's judgment. Even so, there was one person who had always supported me, even if he didn't say much: my father. My father no longer lived with us. After divorcing my mother, he moved to a small town a few hours outside of Chicago. I didn't see him often, but every time we talked on the phone or when I visited, I could feel his genuine care for me, something I never received from my mother or Noah. One day, when I went to visit him, I helped him take his medication and prepared dinner. His health wasn't as strong as before. In recent years, he had suffered from chronic back pain and high blood pressure. As I placed a glass of water on his nightstand, my father looked at me, his eyes kind but thoughtful. "Emily, I know you've been through a lot." His voice was warm but carried a weight to it. "You're a strong young woman, but you don't have to keep carrying everything on your own. I'm proud of you." My heart tightened. I couldn't remember the last time someone had told me they were proud of me. I clenched my hands, trying to stay composed, but a single tear still slipped down onto my palm. "I think you need to leave, Emily," he continued, his voice firm and certain. "You don't belong there anymore." I knew he was right. I knew I couldn't keep living in an environment where I felt invisible and unwanted. I had to leave, not just to escape, but to build the life I deserved. His words gave me the strength I needed. I wouldn't just think about leaving anymore, I was going to make it happen. I had assumed that Noah would remain absent from my life forever, enjoying his own existence without a care for our family. But then, one day he unexpectedly called. And it wasn't to check on our mother or me. The call came late at night, just as I had finished a major project for a client. Exhausted, I had just thrown myself onto my bed when my phone buzzed. Seeing Noah's name on the screen, I hesitated for a moment before answering. "Emily, it's me!" His voice rang with excitement, as if we were still a close-knit family. I stayed silent, waiting to hear what he had to say. "I'm getting married," Noah proudly announced. I closed my eyes, trying to contain my emotions. It had been over 3 years since he last cared about our family, and now, he suddenly showed up just to brag about his wedding? "Congratulations," I replied briefly, keeping my voice as neutral as possible. "Listen, I need a little help." Noah's tone shifted to something more serious. "I need $150,000 for the wedding. Mom said you could help." I froze. That was an outrageous amount of money, and even more ridiculous was the fact that he assumed I would agree without question. "What did you just say?" I asked again, unable to believe my ears. "I know you've been making good money from your online business. Mom told me you're doing really well and that you could easily cover this without it affecting you." I let out a dry laugh. So, my mother had been keeping track of me, not out of care, but to find a way to take advantage of me? "Noah, you disappeared from this family for years, no calls, no messages, and now you come back just to ask for money for your wedding?" I asked coldly. Noah sighed, as if I were the unreasonable one in this conversation. "You're my sister, don't you want to help me? This is my big day." "Do you even know that Dad has been sick?" I cut him off. "Do you know what I've been doing all these years to keep this house running, or do you only care about yourself?" There was a brief silence before Noah responded, his tone impatient. "Dad's fine, isn't he? And Mom is still there, she can take care of him." I felt my blood boil. "You have no right to talk about this family when you haven't cared about it at all," I nearly shouted. But Noah wasn't the only one to shock me that night. As soon as I hung up the phone, my mother walked into my room, her expression displeased. "Emily, did you talk to Noah?" she asked, as if she already knew exactly what the conversation was about. "Yes, and I said no, I have no reason to give him that money," I answered firmly. Her face darkened instantly. "You're so selfish, Emily," she said, disappointment dripping from her voice. "Noah is your brother and he is my son. As parents, we have a responsibility to help our children. His wedding is an important event. Why can't you help just a little?" "A little?" I let out a bitter laugh. "Mom, do you really think $150,000 is a little? My entire life, I have never once received a word of encouragement from you. Yet now you expect me to hand over this money to Noah without hesitation? My mother crossed her arms, looking at me with disapproval. You're making good money. You can help without it affecting you. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Do you have any idea how hard I worked to get to where I am today? I built everything from the ground up, working tirelessly without anyone's help. Meanwhile, Noah has been living comfortably, never thinking about anyone but himself. My mother remained unmoved. Noah is my son. You may resent him, but that doesn't change the fact that he's my child. I will help him no matter what it takes. I stared at her for a long moment. I had always known she favored Noah, but I never imagined she would turn her back on me so easily just to protect his interests. Then do whatever you want, I said, my voice calm but firm. But don't expect me to stand by your side. She shook her head in disappointment, but I no longer cared. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel hurt by her favoritism. I just felt relieved. Like I had finally seen my family's true colors for what they really were. My father passed away on a cold November morning. That day, I received a call from the hospital at 6 a.m. When I saw the number on my screen, my heart clenched. I knew what was coming, but I still prayed I was wrong. Is this Emmeline? We're very sorry to inform you that your father passed away early this morning. He passed in his sleep. I don't remember what happened next. Everything became a blur. The only thing I remember is arriving at the hospital and realizing he was really gone. He lay peacefully in his hospital bed, as if he were just sleeping. But this time, he would never wake up. I sat by his bedside for a long time, his cold hand resting in mine. I had mentally prepared for this day for a while, but when it finally came, I couldn't stop the overwhelming grief that consumed me. He was the only one who had ever told me he was proud of me. The only one who had truly cared about me. And now he was gone. Things only got worse when I realized that I had to handle the funeral arrangements on my own. My mother showed no sign of grief. She didn't even go to the hospital when my father passed away. When I called to inform her, she responded in a flat, indifferent tone. Yeah, I know, you take care of everything. That was it, no tears, no emotion. I tried not to let it hurt me. I knew she had never truly loved my father after their divorce, but at the very least, I had hoped she would respect him enough to mourn him, even just a little. The funeral took place on a gray, overcast day. I arranged everything as best as I could. My father's old friends, neighbors, and former colleagues were there to say their final goodbyes. But when my mother and Noah walked in, I realized they weren't there to grieve. They were there to claim what they thought was theirs. Noah arrived with Olivia, dressed in a tailored suit as if he had just come from a fancy event. Olivia wore a tight-fitting dress that was completely inappropriate for a funeral, but the worst part wasn't their outfits, it was their attitude. Instead of coming to pay their respects to my father, they turned the funeral into a discussion about his assets. I stood frozen as I heard my mother whisper to Noah, right in the middle of the funeral home. We need to talk about your father's assets. How much did he leave behind? What about the house? I clenched my fists, trying to control my anger. We are here to say goodbye to Dad, not to discuss money, I said coldly. Noah turned to me and shrugged as if I was the unreasonable one. Emily, don't be dramatic, this is reality. Dad is gone and his assets need to be divided fairly. Olivia stood beside him, arms crossed. Honestly, she said in a monotone voice, Emily has been living off your father for years. She has no right to claim anything. I clenched my fists so tightly that my nails dug into my skin. I had always known they were selfish, but I never imagined they would be this shameless. Especially at my father's funeral. My mother stood there in silence, making no effort to defend me. I realized that there was nothing left for me to say to them. But things didn't end there. After the funeral, Noah called me to meet him privately at our father's old house. He sat on the sofa, one leg crossed over the other, exuding confidence. I'm taking back this house, he said bluntly. Dad is gone, and as the eldest son, it belongs to me. I looked him straight in the eye. This house doesn't belong to you, Noah. He let out a dry laugh. Then who does it belong to, you? I nodded. Dad transferred the ownership to me before he passed. He knew I was the only one who took care of him, the only one who was truly there for him. The smirk on Noah's face disappeared. You're lying, his voice turned sharp. You can check the paperwork if you want, I said calmly. Dad did this because he trusted me. Noah shot up from his seat. This is ridiculous. I'm the eldest son. I have the right to this house. I stared at him, unfazed. Right? I scoffed. Where were you when Dad was sick, when he needed someone to take care of him? You were nowhere to be found, but now you think you deserve everything? My mother walked into the room, tension evident on her face. Emily, maybe you should share the house with your brother. After all, this is the family home. I let out a bitter laugh, unable to believe what I was hearing. Family? I shook my head. You only remember the word family when it benefits you, don't you? I took a deep breath before continuing. No, Mom. This house belongs to me, and I have no intention of sharing it with anyone. Noah clenched his jaw, his eyes burning with fury. You're gonna regret this. But I knew I wouldn't. I had sacrificed too much, endured too much, and now, I wouldn't let them take away the one thing my father had left me. That night, I made my decision. I would sell the house. I would leave this city, leave these selfish, manipulative people behind. And this time I would truly start over. A new life, free from the toxic ties of this family. I looked at Noah and my mother, seeing the anger rising in their eyes, but for the first time I wasn't afraid. I had endured enough. Standing in the living room of the house where I had spent my entire childhood, I declared firmly, I'm selling this house. I have no ties to either of you anymore. Once everything is settled, I'm leaving and never coming back. The room fell into a stunned silence. Noah clenched his fists so tightly his knuckles turned white, veins bulging on his forehead. Emily, what the hell do you think you're doing? He roared. This is the family home. You have no right to sell it. I crossed my arms and stared him down. This house is in my name, and I have every right to decide what happens to it. If you don't like it, that's not my problem. My mother shot up from her seat, her face pale. Emily, you can't do this. You're destroying this family. I let out a bitter laugh, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Family? When was this ever a family for me? When did you ever care about me without it being about Noah? Dad was the only one who ever treated me well, and the two of you destroyed everything he left behind. So tell me, why should I stay? Without giving them a chance to argue, I turned and walked out of the room, leaving them seething and powerless behind me. I knew they would try to change my mind, to manipulate me into staying. But this time, I wouldn't let them. I reached out to Uncle Mike, the only person in my family I could trust. He was my father's younger brother, someone who had always stayed out of family conflicts but quietly supported me. When I told him about my plan to sell the house and leave, he was silent for a moment, before gently saying, If that's what you want, I'll help you. He helped me find a lawyer to finalize the legal paperwork and a real estate agency to sell the house quickly. Over the next few weeks, I packed up everything that belonged to me, carefully boxing up memories. But I felt no regret. On the day I left, Noah wasn't there, but my mother stood at the door, her face filled with disappointment and bitterness. You'll regret this, Emily, she said, her voice trembling. Family is the only thing you have in this world. I looked at her for a moment before responding calmly. No, Mom. I've created my own path, and I'm never coming back. Then I turned around and walked away, leaving the past behind me. I booked a one-way ticket to Florida, a place with endless beaches, warm sunshine year-round, and where no one knew who I was. As the plane landed, I felt like I had stepped into a new chapter of my life, a chapter free from control, manipulation, or pain. I rented a small apartment by the ocean, just a few steps from the shore. It wasn't big, but it was mine. For the first time in my life, I was truly living for myself, not out of obligation to anyone else. Every morning I woke up to the sound of waves crashing against the shore, no longer burdened by my mother's judgments or Noah's condescending looks. I started spending time on myself, taking long walks along the beach, sitting in cozy little cafes in town, watching the sunset without anyone to disturb me. My online business continued to grow, providing me with enough income to live comfortably without financial worries. I worked in the mornings, spent my afternoons exploring, and in the evenings I read books or wrote in my journal, a habit I had once loved but had long forgotten. The days of overwhelming stress and pressure slowly faded into distant memories. I was no longer the weak Emily, trapped by my family's expectations. I was Emily, the one in control of her own life. One day, as I sat on the beach, watching the waves roll onto the shore, a thought suddenly crossed my mind. I'm truly free now. And for the first time in many years, I felt a deep, genuine sense of peace. In the months after I left, news about my mother and Noah gradually reached me through Uncle Mike. I never asked about them, but he would occasionally call to update me, maybe to reassure me that I had made the right decision in walking away. Without me covering the bills, my mother quickly fell into financial crisis. She had never worried about money because there was always someone else to take care of it. First my father, then me. But now, there was no one left willing to shoulder that burden. Noah and Olivia weren't doing any better. After failing to take the house from me, they went back to their old lifestyle, but this time, things weren't as easy as before. Noah was used to spending freely without a second thought, but now he had to face the harsh reality. There was no one left to fund his lifestyle. They both lived far beyond their means, and before long, they found themselves drowning in debt. I heard they were evicted from the luxury apartment they once bragged about. Unable to keep up with their loans, they had to downsize to a much smaller apartment in a less desirable neighborhood. Olivia, who once carried herself with arrogance and looked down on me, was now bitter over everything they had lost. My mother, after years of believing Noah was the perfect son, was finally starting to see the truth. Without me taking care of everything, she was left trapped in her own reckless spending habits. I didn't know how many times she and Noah had argued, but according to Uncle Mike, their fights had become more frequent and increasingly vicious. "They're destroying themselves, Emily," Uncle Mike said in one phone call. "I'm not telling you this to make you happy, but so you understand that you did the right thing. You saved yourself from a sinking ship. If you had stayed, they would have dragged you down with them." I was silent for a moment before replying softly, "I'm not happy about it, Uncle, but I do feel relieved that I finally got away." And that was the truth. I didn't feel joy or satisfaction in hearing about their struggles. I didn't need revenge, nor did I need to see their downfall to feel like I had won. I just felt relieved that I was no longer a part of it. They had once been my family, but they had never truly loved me. Now, they had to face the consequences of their own actions. As time passed, the past became a distant story, just another chapter that had closed in my life. My new life in Florida gave me a sense of freedom I had never experienced before. My business continued to grow, and for the first time in my life, I was truly living on my own terms. I spent my days enjoying the little things, taking morning walks along the beach, sipping coffee at small roadside cafes, reading books in the shade of palm trees. I no longer worried about criticism, nor did I live under the weight of being overlooked. One day as I sat on the beach, I found myself reflecting on everything I had been through, the years of being dismissed, the pain of never being acknowledged, the long nights wondering if I was making the right choice. And then I realized something important. I had no regrets. If not for my past, I might never have become as strong as I am today. The pain I endured did not define me, but it helped me discover the strength within myself. I chose myself, and that was what truly mattered. As the sun slowly dipped below the ocean horizon, I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. I was finally free, and I would never look back. Life isn't always fair, and sometimes the people we call family are the very ones who hold us back from happiness. Emily's story isn't just about betrayal or injustice, it's about the journey of reclaiming oneself. She had the courage to walk away from toxic relationships, to stand up for herself, and to create a life on her own terms. In reality, not everyone has the strength to do that, but this story is a reminder that true happiness only comes when we learn to put ourselves first. What do you think about Emily's story? Did she make the right decision by leaving her family to start anew? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more real-life stories filled with emotion, family struggles, and personal growth.